I have a cousin, or I had a cousin, my mum's first cousin, called Patrick, from Castle Cove, Kerry. And when he was a young man in his early 20s, he set off to Brazil. He was trained as a Redemptorist priest. He was ordained as a priest and went to Brazil in 1971. After a few months initially in Brasilia, he was sent off to this small town called Iguatu in Ceará, in the northeast. But Patrick in Iguatu fell immediately in love with the place. He had a guitar, he played songs. He was only in his mid-20s, you can imagine going there, and he was only in Iguatu 9 months, and unfortunately a tragedy struck. He drowned in a river, the Rio Jaguaribe, when he was only 27 years of age in 1973. It was a real trauma for the town, and they did find the body, and he was buried in the main church on the altar of the main church in Iguatu. And then fast forward another almost 30 years or more. I'm probably the only person in the family that can speak Portuguese. I made my way up through the Sertão. You're talking thousands of miles to Iguatu, not really knowing what was going to happen. I made phone calls to various priests through my cousins, the sisters that were still alive, talked to some really interesting characters in Fortaleza, another place. Suddenly there was this network of a generation of Irishmen who had been missionaries, some of them priests, some of them secular missionaries, and they're all in their 70s and 80s now, and some of them still out there in these forgotten places in northern Brazil. And some of them knew who my cousin had been, and they had stories, and they directed me in the right direction. And I finally contacted a woman called Teresa, who works in the parish of Iguatu. When I got there, she welcomed me at the bus station. They put me up in a hotel, and it was just a massive surprise. When I got to the parish, there was only one portrait on the wall. It was of Patrick, who looked exactly like my nephew. There's a street named after him called Rio Padre Patricio. That night they did a special mass where hundreds of people came. This is a very poor place. Hundreds of people came to the mass and a special mass, and I was brought up to the altar after the sermon, and there was a standing ovation and applause, and some of the elder people came to me and told me stories about how wonderful Patrick had been and had been a light, and that he was a very special person to them. They prayed to Patrick for good things to happen, and the whole experience was so moving. That's the story of Patrick.